So my father always say when I feel like, can I jump to that party? My life will be easier because I feel like I'm smart enough to play the game. And then he would tell me, hujung tak bagus. Hujung means the end of the rope, tak bagus means not good. So integrity, truthful goes the distance because your ending will be good. The ending of people who just, dance to the whatever rhythm that is playing is not good.
The following is a long, open conversation with Dr. Hadija Mohd, Associate Professor in Humanities, Management and Social Science at City University. As Hadija is an historian based in Malaysia with expertise in both legal, political, and Islamic history in both Malaysia and Southeast Asia, we sought to discuss many topics like what is the definition of a Malay among the Bumiputras? What is the importance of Islam in Malaysia? What is forbidden love under the Sharia Law? And also we discuss more historical topics like the Federation of Malaya and the importance of Malacca across time and space. I want to take a moment to wish a happy Ramadan to all those brothers and sisters in this significant time of reflection, prayer, and community, as you all breakfast in peace and harmony. This is On the Lawn with FVR podcast. If you like this thing, feel free to like and subscribe and to contribute to the channel on the description below. And now, your featured presentation. It was a good time that we chose to do this recording.
It's meant to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's time to start.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of On the Lawn with FVR. Today we have Hadija. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is a unique scenario. So many people don't understand or maybe are not aware where we at.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and they're not going to be the first people to question that. We've been around long time, and it's called City University. It's in a city where there's just too many universities nearby, and sometimes people get confused which one is which. But it's very good to be in an environment where we are in a university environment. So a few colleges, a few other universities are also around here. Yeah.
Wow. And I realized how singular is this floor. Even we have like a kind of a different plant being part of the background. But most important is understand about your journey, because you have a singular background of not only science but also history.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to ask you a little more about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Hadija?
Okay. Right. So let me tackle the easier question first. The background of history and life science. So I started off my journey as a science student even back in high school. So I don't know about your country, but in Malaysia and basically in most Asian countries, we have this obsession of like when we were in primary school, we would be doing like the science stream when we go to high school, especially if you're good in your studies. So they never ask you whether you are good in humanities, in art. It's just that if you're good in your studies, you go to the science stream. So that's what happened to me. Like all the ambitions that were like being brainwashed to my head was like you have to be like a doctor, a pharmacist, a dentist, like anything at all in this medical science field. That's where like you make money, you're well respected in the society. For some reason, that's always the pathway that was presented to us. So I did well in school. I went to the science stream. I liked it. I liked biology a lot. I liked chemistry a lot. I didn't like physics so much or math so much, but I did well. So I went to the medical science field. Not MBBS, but medical science. So basically your pathway would go to the lab, genetic lab or molecular lab or microbiology lab. So I enjoyed it. 4 years of university, I was doing okay, and I thought that was my pathway. And then I graduated with my first degree, and then I realized that this is fine, like I'm okay with this, but this is not it. I felt like something was missing. And then I looked back in my high school journey. I really loved history, and when I did well in history, as if it was just by default you should be good in something that is a core subject, but nobody would ever present to you that, hey, you can be a historian, or you can have a degree in history and be somebody in the social science, in the humanities, in management. So as an adult, with more empowerment, like you feel more confident about yourself, you're making money already, you feel like you can make your own decision. I made that leap of faith, and I started my journey in masters in human science, in history and civilization, which took me years to finish because I needed to do prerequisites first.
Okay.
Yeah, because I never had any exposure in the humanities, in social sciences. My exposure before was only in life and medical sciences. So I had to join classes with undergrad students, and I was already at that time like 25, 26 when I started my master journey. So I had to join classes with 18 and 19-year-old and learn everything introductory about social sciences and history. And only then, after 1 year, a little bit more than a year, only then I could formally start my master's journey. Yeah. And then, of course, I continue with my PhD. Yeah.
And for your PhD, how was the difference of intensity between the master levels and the doctoral level?
Oh my word. Different intensity. Great question. I always love to tell this story even when people didn't ask it, but I'm so glad you asked it. So, masters and PhD, they're two completely different animals. So I thought, because I really enjoyed my master's degree, I learned a lot. I was really transformed as a human being, as an academic, as a scholar. So I thought, it's like, hey, let's do PhD. But it was such a lonely journey, and the only other people who would understand you would be other PhD students. Those who already gotten their PhD, they no longer have the empathy. They forgot about it already. They're like, oh, no, I got it. So like you pay your dues. And then I had a very supportive family, incredibly supportive, but none of them understood my journey. So it was very lonely. It was very challenging, and I was always working. I was always working part-time or full-time. So that was a very one of the more challenging things that ever happened to me in my life was my PhD. Actually, yeah.
This is very singular because I see you and I reminded myself the words of Dr. Michael Economides, who may or may not be familiar to the show, but on episode 7 I sit with a senior woman. Her name is Christine Economides. She was my commander and also my master advisor. Her husband was Dr. Michael Economides, rest in peace, and he usually say that to his PhD students: you need to finish the job. Because one thing is to start a PhD, another thing is to finish a PhD. Given that what you say, that it can be very lonely and also very struggling, how important is to finish the job?
Absolutely very important. Like, okay, so if you asked me, I have the responsibility to tell you the whole hard truth, right? If another student also asks my advice, I say, yes, do it, be diligent, you have to finish it, but at the same time, I'm going to ask them, are you okay? Because it's also okay not to finish it. You don't have to sacrifice all of this, your mental well-being, your physical well-being. You're feeling so lonely just for the sake, like, oh, everybody knows I'm already in my doctorate journey, I should finish with a PhD. If that's your price, then don't finish it, take a break. But if you really like, I'm going to be a professor one day, this is what I'm super passionate about, it's problematic, it's challenging, but I'm going to finish, then I'm going to tell you all the glorious supports that you need to hear.
So there is a right price.
Yes.
I'm happy to hear that, because the whole conversation can be very subjective between is it worthy or not, on how much do we have to pay now or in the future. And to know that
Exactly.
if you have the picture clear, then there is no doubts about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, young Hadija studied science, and adult Hadija perfected her craft in the history and science.
Yep.
So,
I wouldn't say perfected, but I attempted.
well, that's true. So, what made you say, after my PhD, between industry or faculty, what made you decide, okay, I want to go in that direction?
Right. So when I was finishing my PhD, I started my PhD as a research assistant and as a part-time lecturer in my alma mater. So that was usually the natural pathway for everybody doing their PhD. So everything that you do is academic. You have research grant, you work closely with your professor, and at the same time your professor will give you some classes for you to teach undergrad or master's student. So that seemed like so normal, so natural, and it went really well at that point in time. But then we finished the research, we finished the grant, everything was nice. I mean, it was supposed to be a good news, but then I haven't finished my PhD. The research for the professors finished, but my PhD was still going on. I still needed to collect data, analyze my data, do presentation, write these whole pages of things, and so I didn't have a job. And suddenly the job's gone. So I had to find a job. I could not do my PhD. I could not support myself, and I refused scholarship at that point in time because.
Time out. So sorry, this is new, and it's worth interruption. Sorry if I interrupted, but why did you refuse a scholarship?
Okay, so in Malaysia, I'm not sure in any other Southeast Asian countries, but mostly the trend is the same. Most scholarships come with bonding. And yeah, I don't do that kind of thing. Like always in my undergrad, I even took loan that I finished paying rather than take a scholarship where I would have to serve them. For degree, I think 5 years, for master 7 years, for PhD 12 years.
Okay.
So I could not do that at all because I really wanted, like the only reason I can do this right now in ASB, in city universities, because I'm a free person. I can do one project after another, contribute in one area and then the next and then the next because of that freedom. So even as a young person, I recognized that I needed that freedom to explore different projects. Yeah.
That's very important.
For me, yes.
Yeah, very important. And you were mentioning about the not accepting a scholarship and the chance to keep continuing and getting a job.
Yes. Okay. So I found a job, a part-time job. It needed me to work only 3 days a week, and then it was only from 11 to 6 p.m. So I was like, hey, as a PhD student, this is perfect. So I went in, and it was actually a human resource management company, a consultancy company that did training, lots and lots and lots of training. So basically executive education, as we call it in a university, but for a training consultancy company, they call it, training and stuff. So that's when I got all the exposures that I never did get before that in the corporate world, in the real industry. And I started to get all of these ideas and advices that academia should meet industry should meet academia. Neither one of them should be in silo because they're always accusing each other. The academic world, the academic people will always say, they're just running with it without any data, without any theory, suggestion, framework from the academic world. And the industry people will say they spend so much time with the data, it's not even applicable in the industry. So there is a huge gap here, and it's like an ongoing eternal question. And when the government, universities, and the industry start to recognize this collaboration need to happen, I was so glad that I was part of it. And basically that was my first action, experiential learning, pedagogy actually happened. And then after that, I completed my PhD, and ESB called me. Yeah.
So there are two things to dissect there, because from a mostly academic environment, how was hitting the reality of industry? How was that friction during that 11 to 6 job?
Painful.
Can we hear about it?
Painful friction, because I must admit, I don't know about any other academics, but I must admit as an academic, I'm very stubborn. Probably it's a personality trait, but also probably as a scholar, you are stubborn. You think you're right. You think you're cleverer and smarter than other people, and you kind of feel like other people are inferior in regards to theories and how you should do things. So it was painful. First, to break down the barriers, to actually communicate with them, for them to recognize you, but for me to also recognize them. So the meeting halfway was painful, but of course the outcome's just amazing. You become a more humble person, but more knowledgeable, more experienced person. Yeah.
That's such a good lesson learned. And now, the second part of the set was you receive a call.
Mm-hmm.
How was that about? How many months in the making took to actually get the call from ASB?
Okay. That was a quick decision from my end. It wasn't so quick from ASB because they needed to make sure they hired the right person. I think that is one of the strengths about ASB that I still very much respect up until today. The recruitment process is world class. I think so. So they're super careful. They went through like 4 to 5 interviews, if I'm not mistaken. If I were to tell people that I had to go through 4 to 5, they'll be like, "Are you problematic?" But that is how ASB does it. And then that was also summertime, so all the professors were not around. They were traveling the world, doing conferences, presentations and stuff, visiting their family. So it took me a while to meet each one of them for them to approve me. But for me, it was an instant decision because I'm like, hey, this is a business school. This is where I can practice even more this new knowledge that I have, make sure that it has that blend of academia and industry. And then the action learning bit that I thought was like, hey, finally, a local university is doing it, because you always hear, more international university and Western worlds doing action learning, right? Yeah.
So when you hear the word action learning, what came to your mind first, and then what was the reality that bring to you?
Mm-hmm. The first thing that came to mind was practicum kind of situation, but of course practicum was one of it, right? I was thinking like, oh, everybody went like field trip and then tried to understand things and then tried to solve the situation through presentations and application of theories. But then the action learning came into the picture. I got introduced to it and I'm like, whoa, this is intense. This is wholesome, comprehensive, but it took a lot from every part of the components, not just the students, not just the faculty, but people who had to approach the host. Right, the host had to agree with all this sort of intervention that needed to be done, and of course there is a lot of people interaction, so it's so complex, yet that is real life, and I really appreciated that experience from ASB. Absolutely, yeah.
Now, I also remember that it was not only in Malaysia, but it was also in other countries that the practitioner and action learning took place. In which other countries you were also applying action learning and practicing?
Mm-hmm. So I know Singapore and the INSEAD is doing it, and a few other good universities in Singapore, and I know a few other local international collaboration among universities in Malaysia with other bigger universities outside in the world. They start to do it, but of course, the US action learning is a big, huge component in universities in the US. But the one thing that probably distinguish, because I have very good how to say, opinion about ASB and the way they did action learning, because they did it not only once and it was not an elective, it was a core subject and everybody had to do it. And they had, in the beginning, they had 5 action learning, and then during your time, 1 became entrepreneurial track, and you had 4 action learning, including summer associate program. So I still think, up until today, not being a faculty member in Asia School of Business, I still think very highly, and I recognize the importance of ASB did that so intensely, yet so rewarding. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. And given that you have this experience in Southeast Asia, there is also another piece to discuss. Your visit at Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
What can you recall from that time?
Oh my word. That's like one of the best experiences that I had in my life beyond the classroom. Of course, MIT was a great experience. It helped me up until now because I could say that I was a part of that spring immersion, right? Working closely with these world-class professors. So, professionally speaking, it still helps me up until now. It is a talking point if I'm honest, but I remember the fact that we had classes from 8:30 to 4:30, 7-ish we had breakfast, and then we walked to class, 8:30 we began, and then we had break, and then we had, our break was earlier, 11-ish we had a break up until 1 something,
Yeah.
right? And then we began again, so the classes were finished quicker, 4:30 something. So in that like 1 hour window during lunchtime, 1 hour and a half, I would rush to go to any event at all within the compound of MIT, sometimes to Harvard University as well, because it was so constant. There is always like every hour there was a program, regardless what the program was. And at that time, there is a lot of conversation and classes about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? And war. And then like shortages of resources, more importantly like fertilizers, and how even the energy industry was very much affected. So I was just so appreciative and just so mesmerized at the amount of effort that MIT as an academic institution, as a community, how they appreciate knowledge, how every hour is spent with any conversation, any discussion at all in regards to knowledge, but as well about social impact. So you can even find like if you walk, you see like LGBTQ's conversation where they hand out ice cream, and while you eat the ice cream you can have conversation. You can break down prejudice and barriers, because even if the group sees me, they would think that I would disapprove of them because I appear Muslim, right? So all of this conversation could just happen, and that is the real reason for you to have a university environment. It's supposed to be a safe environment where you can talk about things academically. And yeah, that was actually among the things that I loved the most being in Cambridge.
Oh yeah. I remember that time also. It was the cold weather, the running weather of April and May, and yeah, it can be a little expensive in some places,
Oh
but
yes.
it was worth it. It was worth it. Also, that true, there was been always an event going on, even in the weekends. Like
Yes.
you have the chance to be in a conference about Bitcoin, or you can have actually music festival happening on the same day.
Yes.
And at the same time, I also felt, this is a self-critique, it was a small bubble. Because Cambridge is like very nice, good roads and everything. And the moment you cross Harvard Bridge, Boston is a different animal.
Yes.
Like you see the streets are uneven, and all of a sudden at night you feel you need to be more alert.
Yeah. Yeah. I put myself in those situations
Ah.
as well, because I love walking. I just absolutely love walking. I mean, I always complain like I cannot walk a lot here in Malaysia because it's so hot. But then in Boston, I took back my words. I had to swallow everything because it's so freezing cold. Like I was like, I rather take Malaysian humidity rather than being like frozen to death. Walking what, 40 minutes from Kendall to Harvard. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. From one bubble to the next, you have to pass through reality of life, right? So that also I appreciated to understand, you know, sometimes it is a bubble. Like the reason why you could enjoy things because you are privileged to be there. Some people, even if it's just next door during that reality road, they could not even enter this bubble to begin with. So you're right. That's a very good reflection. Yeah.
That's true. And in a certain way, I was not as happy as other members of my cohort because coming from Houston, Texas, you always saw, oh, it's going to be a moment around the corner that the police will find something and some accident will happen. And it's like I was always on alert. And to be in KL and also to be in Cambridge, it was like just stay alert. But sometimes that pace of not being alert for so long, it can be a little detrimental at times.
Yeah.
We went to Fenway Park to see one of the baseball games, and we began to feel how was the real world.
Yeah.
Because the local team lost, and then all of a sudden, people were complaining, and you thought, okay, this is more likely. This is very more likely. And
Yeah, but bubbles can happen anywhere.
yes.
Yeah, so if I could share, so I live in actually in downtown KL. It's Jelate. if you know the LRT station Jelate, it's next to Datuk Kramat. So it's not really like a posh area at all. It's a middle class area. It used to be like a bottom 40 area. But surrounding it is actually like flats and how to say low cost apartments that government built for the bottom 40 community. It's just next door, yeah. But because you feel like you live with each other, you feel like I'm not even rich, therefore probably we face similar struggles because you share the same environment. But during the lockdowns, because I lived alone at that point in time. Right now I live with my sister, but at that time I was stuck for a long time by myself because I thought the lockdowns would last only just a couple of months. I think I can survive a couple of months. But the second lockdown, the second long lockdown, it lasted 6 months and a half. So I was probably alone, except for with my cat. And then the fasting month happened. Raya Eid happened, twice of the Eid happened, and every time I was alone. So I registered to be a volunteer, one for the vaccination program, the other one was for the Kita Jaga Kita. I think Professor Melati spoke about this in your platform class. So where they distribute goods and resources to people who needed it, and these people actually volunteered their information on the platform. So I would just open the platform. I had better access than the normal public because I was part of the team, and I could recognize who needed it. And they were just nearby my area, like next door. So when I actually went there and sent all of these goods, it was just like eye-opening to me. I'm like, this is my apartment, which I thought is just a normal apartment, modest, but it's a privilege still. I didn't live there, and then when I sent all the materials there, I felt like there is a lot of conversations and a lot of realization need to happen for me as a person and probably for other people, because there's just something happening behind our house that we don't even recognize. They didn't even have any food to eat that particular day. I don't know about the next day, but on that particular day, with the baby, with 2 toddlers, they didn't have any food to eat because they were let go during the lockdowns, no job and stuff like that. So I really like the fact that you mentioned the word bubble, because it can happen anywhere. Yeah, we don't need to be in a highly privileged area to say we live in a bubble. Yeah.
That's true. And I fully support that explanation as well because, for example, around the Bangnegara station, it's too safe. And at the same time, no food at all. You need to go toward what is Sogo, Lulu, Lili, Lala, I don't know. But you have to go there.
Yes.
Otherwise, the other option is to pay a fee from something to get your food, and those fees can accrue on a daily or weekly basis.
Yep.
So it's always a good check. Another bubble I also found was during my extra learning project. We were in Bangkok, close to the Queen City Queen Station, National Convention Center, very nice area. And you may say, well, this is how Bangkok feels like. You need to explore a little more. When we took the train to the Sukhumvit station, we began to see realities of Bangkok. Or when we went to the football game that was on Saturday, we had to pass through the market. And we saw, okay, this is what it's about. It's not only what you see on the website, but what you feel and see on the streets. This is what the country is about. Let alone if you take a trip across the country. For example, when I go to Singapore, I usually go through bus. 50 ringgits from the Berjaya Times Square. I mean, the best deal. If you happen to do that, just take it, you see part of the country. And when you do the stops, you also see, okay, this is not Kuala Lumpur. This can be somewhere between Malacca and Johor. Okay, now you understand part of this. Now you see how the impact of the communities can happen when there is a flood going on. Or how the contrast will be when you are in the border of Malaysia and then the border of Singapore. So it's true. Absolutely, I feel that.
I love taking buses too. I love to go up north because I am from the south. I'm from Malacca. So the northern areas are far more mystical to me than the southern areas. So I love going to Penang, Kedah, and my most favorite state would be Perak because it's so historical. But I love taking buses because you get to see these kind of things. There are things that I still don't know, and I still don't think it's being advertised publicly, right? And then you find out reality is very, very different than what's inside your bubble. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Given that in advance, yes, a pending homework for me will be to visit Penang and Perak, the places that are up north, which are equidistant to Singapore. I mean,
Yes.
sorry to bring right now my foreign mask, but it's like if you give me the choice, I will go to Singapore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I should visit Penang any other day. Now,
Cheaper too.
yes, I agree on that. Now, I would like to ask you something from your background because we heard that you got experience in science and also you are building experience in history. Yeah. I would like to ask you about the history of Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
So, how Malaysia came about?
How Malaysia came about. Okay. All right. So let's do the textbook one, yeah? First. So always in the first chapter of any history discussion about Malaysia, we'll talk about Malacca.
Okay.
Yeah, because Malacca, as we know it right now, is a small, tiny state in the south, slightly towards south, but not really south-south. But actually, in the olden days, in the glorious days of Malacca, the whole entire west coast of Malaysia today was Malacca. So from all the way from Penang up until Singapore now, everything was Malacca. So now it's just that tiny state. And but of course, the castle or the mansion or the government was located in the current day Malacca. So every time we speak about the history of Malaysia, we would go back to that glorious days of Malacca, which was a very short civilization. It's just less than 200 years, but it was glorious. This was contemporaneous to the time of Istanbul being having its glorious time. So basically, the whole Granada, Spanish, the Moroccan Spanish time, and before the end of the conquest, Reconquista, right? So 7th century of the Crusade War between the Muslims and the Christians with the Ottoman Empire, and then finally in 1492, Isabella and Ferdinand won. All the Muslim empire fell down from the European continents except for Turkey being standing. So during the glorious time of the Ottoman Empire of Turkey, that was also the glorious time of Malacca towards the end. And the thing is, we had the best pathway to go from one side of the world to the other side of the world, which is the Straits of Malacca. So it's a shortcut, right? And the shortcut was only being given rights to the Muslims or those who were allies to the Muslims. So this gave even more motivation to the Portuguese and Spanish empire to, we need this thing, we need this route because we are taxed higher. It's not like they're not allowed to go there, but they were taxed higher. And of course, all were politically and religiously motivated. But yeah, so it was such a heavy traffic, all powers across the world. When they want to cross to the other side, this side wanted to cross to this side, they would use the Malacca Straits. And Malacca Straits is actually very, shallow. So all the boats, all the ship would be parked really, really far from the Bay Area. And, if we were to see illustrations right now, imagination from all the written reports, it would be very, very, very crowded. Really close to the Aceh, Indonesia today. Yeah, because it's really not a very, very deep ocean. So anyway, once Malacca fell down to the Portuguese in 1511, we were passed from one colonist power to the other, from the Portuguese to the Dutch to the British to the Japanese to the British again, until we got our independence in 1957. So as Malaya, we were independent in 57. As Malaysia, we came about in 1963, when we got Sabah and Sarawak, the Borneo portion of Malaysia. So Malaysia came about in 1963, if I were to answer your question in one sentence.
So you say Malaya and you say Malaysia.
Yeah.
Which is the difference? The Borneo portion or something else?
Both. Physically speaking, we were Malaya, But Malaya, of course, the connotation is that this is the kingdom of the Malays, the land of the Malays. Literally, Malaya in my language is called Tanah Melayu, the land of the Malays. So the political connotation does not sound actually very nice or very correct at all. Therefore, Malaysia is more inclusive, right? So there is a physical bit when Sabah and Sarawak came into the picture. Yes, we are Malaysia, but also we could have still be called Malaya, even with Sabah and Sarawak came into the picture, right? But it would not describe the real makeup and composition of the people. It would just say, oh, this is the land of the Malays, when it's actually not only the land of the Malays.
Malays. So, is this a community? Is this an ethnicity? Is this a faction? I know they are people, but if I need to define Malay, what would be a Malay?
So a Malay, politically speaking, is somebody who is genetically Malay and slash or Muslim and slash or somebody who speaks the language, practices the culture, and is part of the Malay community.
Okay. So there are three conditions that should happen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
part of the Malay community, how someone can be part of the Malay community?
Yeah, with somebody who actually speaks the language, practices the culture, and is Muslim. So yeah, that would be the definition.
I see that.
Yeah.
And when you say genetically, how is it different from any other human being?
Okay. So this is where the politics come into the picture,
Okay.
yeah? So if I have to dissect myself, if I give you my DNA and you run to the lab, you will find that I'm not 100% Malay. I actually doubt there is such thing as 100% Malay, because when we trace back, it will go all across Southeast Asia and South Asia particularly, and Middle East, because it was such a melting pot during before Malacca, during Malacca, and after Malacca. Before Malacca, of course, our relationship with China and Turkey, it was a very good relationship. So there was like political convoy who came in, social convoy, business convoy that came in and stayed, and of course intermarriage happened, provided that they took Islam, right? Because that's always the condition for anybody to marry a Muslim. And then the Malacca time happens, when all these other businesses from India, from the Arabian countries came here, and then assimilation happened again. But the bigger assimilation happened during the colonialist time. So Portuguese not so much, because they focus so much in the maritime area. The Dutch, they focus a lot in Indonesia, so that's why you see so many Indonesians have Dutch blood. Not many Malaysians do. But then during the British and Japanese time, they brought, immigrants from other countries. The bigger countries would be China and India, of course. So this is where there is a lot of assimilation in regards to DNA, genetic assimilation. So if you were to run with my DNA, you would see that I have Indian blood, Arab blood, Indonesian blood. Okay. So the genetic argument wouldn't really fly. But if my dad recognized himself, identified himself as politically a Malay, then I can say I am genetically a Malay, even though his identification is a political Malay.
Okay.
Yeah. So most of the Malays today in Malaysia are defined as Malays by the political advantage that we have. So long that we are mostly Malays, we speak the language, we practice the culture, we are Muslim, we uphold the traditions, we are considered Malay. But so many of us are actually like the Said and the Sharifah, they are probably 50% Arab. But because there is that political advantage, if you were to fulfill these criteria, you can be a Malay. Yeah.
Advantage, you mentioned at least 3 times. Which are the incentives to identify yourself as Malay, to, let's say, am I Chinese Malaysian or an Indian Malaysian? Which are the advantages that you mentioned?
There is actually a quantitative advantage.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the easiest example that I told you in class as well when I taught you the introduction to Malaysia is in education itself. So I fall inside the quota that if I got 10 A's in my high school results, and a Chinese Malaysian person and an Indian Malaysian person also got 10 A's in their high school results. So three of us were all smart, brilliant people, yeah? But I would have a better chance getting into a very good public university in comparison to these two. I'm not saying they're not going to get there, but I have a better chance because of me being a Malay. And a Bumiputra meaning the son of the soil. So Bumiputra includes more than the Malays, Sabah Sarawak people, who are actually the real original people in Malaysia, and the Aborigines are the real original people. So they are the Bumiputra. So the Malays fall under that category, and the Malays are the majority group in this Bumiputra umbrella.
Wow, now we are entering a different field, the Bumiputras.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Bumiputra is something bigger, and then the Malays is
inside. Yes.
So I'm led to believe that not all the Bumiputras are Malay, but
correct.
But not all the Malays are Bumiputras.
All Malays are Bumiputra.
But not all the Bumiputras are
correct.
Malay. So what is a Bumiputra?
So.
And what else is besides Malays? Because in order to complete the Bumiputra section, you have more than Malays.
Yeah.
What are they?
Okay, good question. So let's dissect the term itself. So the word Bumi means earth. So it's still used. It's a Sanskrit word. Both words, Bumi and Putra, they're both Sanskrit words because, the Indians were here long time in the older civilization, the Majapahit, Sriwijaya. They had all of these temples across Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. So we inherit a lot of the languages. So Bumi means soil or earth, and Putra means sun. So if you see the royalty, they have title Putra and Putri. Putra means prince, Putri means princess, but literally it means son and daughter. So Bumiputra, the son of the soil or the children of the soil. So they should be the original people. And the Sabah, Sarawak, the Borneo people, they are the original people because they lived here for thousands of years. Longer than any of the Malays, or any of the modern Malays could trace their genetics here in Malaysia. And then also, not just the Borneo people, even in the peninsula, we have original people, the Aborigine people, and they have so many different tribes, yeah? So their rights are there. It's just that they are not as participative in the politics and in the economy as the Malays do. So that's why the Malays look like the more advanced Bumiputra faction, because one, they are larger in number, and second, they're very, very participative in the politics. So they look like they are the only Bumiputra, but there are so many ethnic groups and tribal groups that could be considered as Bumiputra. And the other groups will be the non-Bumiputra, such as the Chinese, will be the second largest group, the Indians, and then other groups such as those whose family just arrived to Malaysia 100 years ago. They are citizen, but they don't belong in any of these groups, so they are called the others, such as the Pakistani groups. Probably some Indonesian groups fall in that category as well. Yeah.
Wow, I guess that can also include, let's say, any random British or Australian who decide to settle here for hundreds of years.
If they receive the citizenship, they would have fallen under the others group. Yeah. And citizenship is a very tricky, challenging process in Malaysia.
Okay.
Yeah. So Malaysia has one of the strictest rule in giving citizenship. There is no such thing as dual citizenship in Malaysia.
Okay.
If you know a Malaysian with a dual citizenship, they do it elsewhere. It's not under the Malaysian regulation and policies. It's not allowed.
That's very important to know. Now, we address the first bucket that says what a Malaysian is, or the faction of Malay. And then you mentioned something about the faith and the practice of the faith. So, why Islam to become Malay?
So this is again political. I think I would be cancelled any day for saying this, but my assessment is it is political. So you can be a Chinese person, a Chinese Malaysian, and you can take Islam, but you still cannot be a Malay, meaning that you are a Muslim, a Chinese Muslim, right?
Believers.
Yes, believers, the believers in the faith. So they're still not going to be Bumiputra unless if they marry a Bumiputra, then their children would have a higher chance to be considered politically Bumiputra, even though they come from half Chinese, half Bumiputra.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not like you have to be Muslim in order to be Malay. You cannot be a Malay, but any ethnic group can be Muslim, and that could give you a political advantage being in Malaysia, in which the official religion is Islam. Yeah. And the politics are very much intertwined with this whole racial and religious discussions. Yeah.
This is fascinating, especially in times of Ramadan, because this episode is going to be aired during that.
In 10 days or less.
Uh-huh.
9 or 10 days, yeah.
Yes. So, I'm also led to believe that one thing is the Muslim in name only, and the other is the religious Muslim in practice. So, how can you test how religious a person is? Is because of the Ramadan? Is because a man has to go every Friday? I'm seeking to understand.
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. Right. Okay, so I think Malaysia is a very good case study to test whatever the thesis statement that you're talking about. Okay. Imagine we have one country that is like fully Islamic. So let's call it the Kingdom of Islam, for example. Yeah, because we don't want to mention the real kingdom. And then you have Malaysia, and then you have like the US, where there are Muslims practicing. Okay. So in this particular kingdom, Kingdom X, that if you don't practice, if you don't show that you're practice, you will be legally punished, right? Okay, so in all the extreme cases, even if a woman chooses not to cover in ways that she pleases, like, you know, there is many different ways to cover. So in that particular kingdom, they're going to be punished legally. Okay? And then you take Malaysia. Malaysia is halfway through. So in Ramadan, you cannot have somebody who obviously looks Muslim and eat outside. You cannot have that. They might be called for counseling, they might be fined. They're not going to be like punished, they're not going to be jailed, but they might be, you know, something might happen to them. But nobody will know whether they go to Friday prayer or not, whether at home I pray or not, whether I do things, you know, that are not permissible in Islam. Okay. But there are areas where you can be legally punished, such as drinking alcohol publicly. You may be fined again, you may be called to the Islamic court, the Sharia court, and you may be fined. But there's no such thing as like, you know, you're going to be like severely punished for that. So that's Malaysia. And then on the other hand, the lighter side of Malaysia is that I can choose to wear whatever I choose to wear. So this is a choice. I'm not at all forced to wear this. I can wear it long, I can wear the veil, I can wear it showing a little bit of my hair, I can wear it anywhere I please. I'm not going to be legally punished or rewarded by the law, which is in contrast to that particular kingdom that I was talking about. Okay, so that's why Malaysia is a good case to test. Like if you want to test my religiosity, you'll be like, oh, Hadija has the option not to do that, but she does do that. So you know, there is certain level of religiosity, but of course that's just like surface area, right? But bear in mind, I might be socially pressured to wear this. Like I probably don't want to go through people gossiping about me. Oh, she's, you know, coming from a Muslim family, why doesn't she cover? So that could be my motivation, even though I'm not going to be legally punished, but that could be my motivation, right? And on the other hand, the best case scenario is there is no law that is prohibiting you or rewarding you to do anything. You do it out of your own belief system, right? So that's why I use the United States or the UK. There is no legal system to punish them if they were to do this or not do this. It's just they do it out of love to the religion, out of love to their God.
The freedom of choice.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is very important to put that, because in time of social media, that a lot of people want to put pressure to say that someone has the choice is really powerful. Now, You mentioned something very briefly about a court,
Mm-hmm.
the Sharia court.
Yes.
I believe there is a Sharia law.
Yes.
So, can we discuss what is that and how observant people who is not Muslim should take care of this?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the Sharia court was first installed. It was actually an intervention by the British. It's not an invention by the Muslims. There's no such thing as court, Sharia court in Islam. So in reality, Sharia law is a personal law.
Okay.
It's a guidance in life, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. When you do something that digresses other people's rights, then yes, you would be, judged by a certain people in the society who's more informed about the religion, about legal system in the religion. Especially if you take somebody's rights, you kill somebody, you steal things from them, then yes, there is a proper like a meeting situation. But there's no such thing as a court. It's a British thing. So when they were here, yeah, they arrived in the 1700s, in the early 18th century, and then they started to be like here as people who are just officers. Like we're trying to understand better, we're trying to promote businesses, we're trying to, help around, but we're not intervening. But the moment they found out opportunities and room for them to intervene, which actually happened in the state that I was talking about, in Perak, my favorite state because it's super historical. That's where they found out, hey, this is the area that we can intervene because there is two kings. Imagine one state, two kings. Obviously, they're going to clash, right? When they were clashing, they asked for different help. One asked for the help from the Chinese miners, who unfortunately were gangster groups, so they had power as well and money. And the other king asked for the help of the British, and the British had better approaches, and they sort of solved the problem. But by solving the problem, they managed to put one foot in Malaya, in the land of the Malays, and that's what happened afterward. The whole entire country fell under their occupation. And then they started to realize that, hey, these people, they have a certain way of life and it worked for them. They seem to be very loyal to their religion, and they don't look aggressive. They're okay in comparison to people that we saw in other parts of the world that we have a presence in. But they realized that this law that they are following is so individual, it's not written. There is no code, there is no enactment, there is no ordinance. We need to do something about it. And they did. And they use a very valid excuse. In fact, I respect their excuse. They said that a Muslim man can marry more than one wife. Okay, but where is the record? What if he marries more than four? Who's going to say like he has responsibility for all of these wives? Right? So if this person say, hey, he's my husband, where is the record? So because I need to ask for my rights from the husband, financial or otherwise. And then another tricky thing is, this person can divorce me and you can marry immediately somebody else. I cannot. I have to wait 3 months. And the wisdom behind it, my religion asked me to wait 3 months is just in case if I'm pregnant. If I'm pregnant, you need to be responsible of the baby, right? Not my new husband. So I cannot marry my new husband carrying your baby. So that's the wisdom. But to the British, they're like, hey, how come he marries and she cannot marry and she has to wait 3 months? So can we codify all of this? So it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. So that's why this whole court Sharia law was happened and enacted, and that's where the history is. So although it sounds weird, like there is an Islamic court, a Sharia court, but it's actually a legacy of the British rather than the legacy of the Islamic traditions.
This is very insightful because you mentioned the influence of Malacca for centuries and the Muslim community that was so a stronghold, and then all of a sudden you're saying that the Sharia law was actually implemented by British. It is something that really opens the eyes of the people who are not familiar with it. It's like an educational moment right now that I have. And given that we hear and we see people who have to pray or have to wear by choice, why fasting? There is the Hari Raja, the Hari Eid, the Fatiri. Please forgive me the names that sometimes I say just for the sake of it. But why to fast 1 month? Why not 2 months? Why not half a month?
Okay. So most discussions, about decree in our religion, some of them, yes, we can tell you there is a wisdom behind it. Like, for example, the example that I just told you about, to make sure that the lady was carrying this person's child so that he is responsible for that baby until the baby is an adult. So I can tell you, yes, fasting purifies the body, physically speaking, because it's intermittent, right? You eat in the morning before 6 o'clock, and then you don't eat at all for 12 hours or so, and then you eat again. So that is intermittent fasting, in which it has been proven by science to actually be very beneficial for our body, especially in balancing our insulin level and therefore, managing our diabetes or avoiding diabetes. But when you ask that very interesting question, why is it not only 2 weeks? Why is it 1 month? Why is it 2 months? Of course, this has been theorized and attempted to be answered by some Islamic scholars and other scholars as well. But to this extent, we call it a decree. Okay, so we have 12 months. Even in Islamic month, there are 12 months, and each month has its own specialty, has its own beauty. So we have the Hajj month where they go to pilgrim. We have a month where it's the month of Abraham and the son, the story of Abraham and the son, the month where the Prophet went to travel all the way to Jerusalem, which does not make any sense in modern days. Like, how can you travel from Mecca to Jerusalem in one night? So there is a lot of these wonderful, magical, mystical stories that are believed by people from my faith, but every month has its own story. So probably that's one of the reasons, like, to make Ramadan or fasting month as like 1 month, to make it like extra special.
So I really welcome all of this, and knowing that there is particular moments and particular times to do that as an expression of faith, I need to ask this. People are humans, and sometimes when they visit Malaysia, or let's say Saudi Arabia or any other Muslim country, when they are for so long, sometimes they need also to meet other people. So my question is, what is forbidden love under the Sharia law? Because as a Western man, let's say for a moment, I hung out with a Muslim woman for so long, and all of a sudden I happen to grab her hand in front of Masjid Jamek. Oh, what am I gonna do? I'm not sure if this is punished or not. Or what if I were a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and then all of a sudden, can I express my love? Or how are those things related in 2023?
All right, excellent question. Okay, so the Sharia laws are only applicable to the Muslims and Malaysian Muslims. So you can be a Yemeni Muslim person and the Sharia law of Malaysia will not apply to you. Okay, so that is one area. A second, you mentioned that, if you had a girlfriend, you want to show public affection, which is probably very acceptable in many parts of the world, will it be okay here in Malaysia? Right? So this is more of a social awareness and cultural awareness rather than it is religious awareness. So if you are like holding, hugging, kissing their cheeks, which are still okay in all countries in the world, it's okay. But of course we need to be aware of our surrounding. Even I wouldn't do it in a church or in a temple, in other people's religious areas, right? Out of respect that this place is meant for other things. So if in front of Masjid Jamek, probably don't do that. But if you were to do that, you probably would receive some frowns from the guards or from the imam coming out from the masjid. They'd be like, okay, I think that's a Muslim girl, she shouldn't be doing that. But he wouldn't go to you and report you to the police. There's no such thing, because it's not a crime. Only criminal behaviors will be punished by the law. There are crimes under the Sharia law. Among the crimes would be drinking alcohol. Drinking alcohol is a crime. If I were to do it, I would be a criminal.
Okay.
Yeah, as if you are killing a person, that's a crime. If I were to drink alcohol publicly and got caught, it would be a crime. Okay, and then of course, like a husband not paying the financial responsibility, that is a crime actually under the Sharia law. So you can actually be caught by the police if the Sharia law so decides to call the police to actually catch you because you did not pay the alimony or anything like that. So what we need to be clear of, which things are socially and culturally unacceptable, but all you would get would be like gossips and frowns, and probably some real brave assertive uncles or aunties would be like, don't do that. Yeah, but you would not be criminal or be punished by the law. But then there are other things which are punished by the law.
Now, under that variable, the first one, what if, in this case, being a Western man with a Muslim woman, what if she wants to raise a flag? I am very religious. Will that be under the dimension of social or under the law itself?
Social.
Oh, so it's not punishable.
No.
So it's more like a social concept.
Yes. If she was to say she is, your question again, if I could verify your question?
Yeah, to verify the question is, given these defined lines, if a woman says that I'm very religious,
she's very religious.
allegedly,
Okay.
because there is no ways in Malaysia to even to verify, right?
Yeah.
If, for example, a sign of affection happens to be in public, in a allowed place, will this trespassing will be under the social construct or under the law construct?
It depends if she welcomes it or not, right? So if you know, I look Muslim, right? So if I were touching you in public, people will be like, okay, people would assume nicely about me. They'd be like, okay, that's her husband. Probably she doesn't have to show all of us that she loves her husband, but they would assume you're my husband. But clearly, if I look so young, I look 16 or I look 18 and I do that with you, clearly I'm not married, people will be frowning. But I wouldn't be punished. You clearly wouldn't be punished by the law. I wouldn't be punished by the law. What would be punished by the law if somebody who is clearly a Muslim, a Malay Muslim, saying that, hey, I leave the religion. So in the Sharia law, in the country, that's not allowed to happen.
Okay.
So if you already leave the religion, you don't believe anymore in the religion, it should be done silently. Unfortunately, it's in the law. You cannot announce that you leave the
And
religion.
if you announce, what happens to that person?
You will be tried in the court and you will be fined, I think even locked up. There is some description under the law. There is some punishment that could happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And you have to actually come back and say, hey, I am Muslim again. If you continuously be like that, then there is a certain set of punishments. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds a little, which is the word? I want to be delicate on this, but how is it I say publicly, I offend so many people, and then you make me go back to the court and I have to say, oh, I'm back.
Yeah, it is the law, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, we can discuss that if it's about, let me tell you something, an example, a very interesting example. Okay, so in Malaysia, in many Southeast Asian countries that practice Islam, touching dogs is not allowed. That's why you don't see Malay families having dogs in their house. And if they do it quietly. Then you're not going to be legally punished, nothing. But it's just that the religious faction in this part of the world say you cannot touch dogs. If you go to Egypt, Pakistan, even Saudi Arabia, it's fine. Like they might not have the dogs at home because it's just not a culture of the Muslim traditions. But it's like, it's a dog, it's just like any other cat. If they touch me, I will touch him, okay. But in Southeast Asia, Indonesians, Malays, even Filipino Muslims, for some reason, that's the faction that we got. Okay, so, but I'm not going to be punished legally or anything if I were to have a dog in my house. But you will create a whole different sensation on the social media, people dictating like, oh, she's a terrible Muslim, touching dogs. Doesn't she know the faction that we believe in this part of the world is this one, this one, and this one? So you would get cancelled immediately.
So all of a sudden we are discussing like a morality police among your own friends.
Yes. It has happened. I'm not creating a hypothetical situation. Real life events had happened like this, and those sort of discussion happened for the next 2 to 3 weeks, discussing about how dare this person touch that dog. Yeah.
I mean, do people have their own lives, right?
So, yeah, which is a bit funny because it's like, it's like, where's the morality? Like you say, it's morality police. Okay, if I take off my hijab, yeah, my scarf, and I say like hijab is not even compulsory, then probably it makes sense for the morality police to tell me like just keep it to yourself. But touching dogs, showing affection to your dogs and not disturbing any people's life, just showing loving care to an animal, how is that something that could be judged by the morality police
Of your own friends.
of your own community? So that is
Wow.
a strange thing to me, something that is so ingrained in my community, to be punishing people of something that is so absolutely very silly. Yeah. And they will say, and some people will say, hey, how about in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, they touch dogs, and their comeback will be, yeah, but that's in another country. This is Malaysia, this is Indonesia.
Oh, so all of a sudden their behavior will change if they cross border to Thailand or Singapore, right?
Probably.
I've been visiting Singapore and I realized that the Islam influence is not as pronounced as here in Malaysia.
Mhm.
Given that I'm not from the region, do you know why?
So Singapore doesn't have an official religion. So 3 countries in the world don't have that. Many other countries, even if it's not in their constitution, they mention like this is an official religion of some sort, right? So India, Turkey, and Singapore don't have that, which is surprising. India and Turkey, they look like they have some sort of majority of a certain religion. Turkey, Islam, India, Hinduism, but they actually are the true secular country in definition. So Singapore is one of them. They make sure that there is no such association with any religion at all, be it Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or anything like that.
Now, one last thing to finish this window of religion when we want to identify a Malay.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm not Malay. Obviously, I'm not Muslim.
You do look a little bit like one. Have you been mistaken as one?
Yeah, that's true. I can tell a little story. So, close to the Bangalore station, there is like a small Bumiputra place to eat. For 5 ringgits, you get a very big fish that can last for lunch and dinner. I highly recommend it. When I go there, I go in shorts and a shirt, but it looks like one of those buffet areas that is like for government offices. So they realize this looks like a bird that is out of place. So let him get some money. Maybe he's not gonna come back very soon. So sometimes I go there, and even the owner of the little place recognizes, okay, this guy comes here, gets his food. When he finishes, he returns the plate. Okay, it's fine. And they don't kick me out. It's like, okay, just let him get the meal. Last year in the Ramadan time, I saw people buying the food on plastic because they couldn't eat until the sun sets around 7. But the owner saw me and was like, oh yeah, gave me a plate, and he gave me the food and everything. I remember some people were like, but he's Malay, he looks Malay. And I was like, no, every time he eats, he does the sign of the cross. As a Catholic Christian, just let him eat. And it's like, how many are there? Only one. It's like, that guy looks like a lost bird and he's gonna fly away somewhere. So that happened. A friend of us, Ashman, who maybe is gonna be here on this window right now, he also mentioned that at times I'm mimetized, which I guess can be a good topic, because all of a sudden I'm not singled out like, look at that, let's go after that person. In other regions, if you look different, they can kidnap you. If you speak and you have a different accent, they will go after you because you are from another region, you have money. For example, you can look Latina. Even with the hijab, people will say, it's fashion. But the moment you speak, that person is not from here. So if you go to other places like in Latin America, let's say in the favelas of Rio, go with a local friend and let the local friend speak. Because the moment they hear your accent, you are not from here. And number two, English. There are places in the world when they relate English with the imperialistic USA. You are pro-capitalist, you are anti-socialist, and because there's a lot of left-wing agendas in many places, it's like, oh, you are a bad person, you have money, we need to take you down. So don't do the English. Let the other person do the local language. And that's sometimes methods of survival or mimetization that can be very helpful. And with that little tangent already said, talking that people that, okay, don't look Malay, and of course they don't practice the Islam, how can they be respectful during these delicate times? Because, for example, if you go to a mosque, that's a silent place, a place of reflection. You cannot ask, right? You should ask after the visit of the mosque and everything. So how can people be respectful and understanding in these delicate times?
I think that's a very nice question. I mean, the question itself shows a lot of respect and a lot of wanting to understand. So thank you so much, and for wanting to also enlighten your listeners. So I'm going to take a personal stance first, yeah? So my choice to follow my religion, for me, it's a beautiful decree by God. And in fact, God says all of the things that are asked in the religion for you to do, pray, give to others, they are for you. Fasting is for me. So it is something that God asked from you. Fasting is for me. So for me to follow that and actually find beauty in it, I remember some friend who I told her one time only that I love Ramadan. Every year I wait for Ramadan because I feel like that's the time I find true peace. For some reason, it's just immediate switch. That one whole entire month I find true peace, and every year she would remind me that she's Dutch. So for me, that's a choice. Yeah, like I can go home and eat by myself, or before I go to work when I'm supposed to be fasting at 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. Before I leave to the office, probably at 7 o'clock I eat. Nobody will know. But the fact that I follow the decree by choice, why do I need to ask other people not to eat in front of me? What rights do I have? That shows an immediate superiority over other people. My faith is better than yours. My faith is truer than yours. Just because I am fasting, I am practicing my religion, you have to respect. Do a little bit part of yourself. Why? How terrible of a self-esteem do I have? How insecure I am about my own religion, about my God, that I ask other people to respect me? No. So I would, like, if you say you're fasting, yeah, I would be the most common sense. I would be like, delicious. I wouldn't do that, right? That would be rude. But then if I were to drink like this, why would that bother you? So that would be my personal stance. But living in a country where religion and politics are very much intertwined, and in a situation where some groups, ethnic groups or political groups, are so threatened by other things which are happening, because things happen every day, trends happen, innovations happen, and some political groups, some group of people are so threatened by certain things. Probably they're not as developed as their opposition, probably they're not as smart as their opposition, therefore they have to latch on things that give them strength, right? So of course my ethnic group, my religion being the official ethnic group and religion in the country, give strength. So when that political and religious lens are very much intertwined also to the legal part of the country, how the country is being run, then of course things like don't eat in front of me, or school students, when Muslims are fasting, close the canteen, that Chinese and Indian and other religious practitioners cannot even eat at the canteen. So for me, things like that don't make sense. It does not make sense. I feel embarrassed that it happens. I feel like why do you have to use the law and your superiority to tell other people not to eat just to respect you? I feel so embarrassed. For me, it's immediately like very low self-esteem, very high insecurity. So I don't agree with that. But what to do? That is the political lashing on that political situation. So for me, it should be be respectful, have some manners, respect people who you are aware fasting because we are friends, we are colleagues. Don't do weird things like pizza and things like that. But then no need to not eat in front of the Muslims.
That's a very refreshing point of view, because right now you contrasted what is an authoritarian point of view versus a libertarian point of view. The one that says you have to do and comply as I say versus the other one that suggests this experience is so good, it's not mandatory, you can opt in. I believe it in the latter because
It is mandatory, but you can opt in or opt out. Do you understand? It's
Yeah.
mandatory in the sense that we believe in the afterlife, just like many other people, and therefore we will receive our rewards and punishment for complying and for not complying. So, individually speaking, it is mandatory to God, between me and God. But it shouldn't be mandatory between human and human. Right?
That's a
It's
good
a
point.
religious practice. It shouldn't be. Yeah.
It's very important that you mention that, because now if we put the conversation on the other side of the coin, people may ask me like, hey Fabian, why you choose to be Christian? Why are you Catholic and not, let's say, Protestant or everything? So a little of clarification. It was not because I was in a Catholic high school. It was not because my mother imposed me the religion. It was because I saw my grandma attending every Sunday, and I went with her every Sunday. I saw friends that were quote unquote Catholic Christians. They were doing the volunteering and everything, but they were not practicing accordingly. And I decided to go that path because it was not only to honor my grandma, but also to give some discipline in my life. That was like, it's not about my words, but how my actions reflect my faith. And that's how it's been ever since. And it was a choice. It was not mandated by anyone. So if I have kids, God permits, I will not impose them any faith. They need to see me if I'm practicing, or they need to see my wife or their mother to see how they practice. And they have to choose, because parents will be gone. And the next generation have to make choices on their own. And if we take a look at what is going on in America, a lot of Christians is actually decreasing their amount because they are, for some reason, also feeling this social construct. You have to practice on your own. You have to let everybody know that the experience is so good, people want to get in. Why also this can be applicable? For example, and this can be controversial, but it's on me, so on our guest. The military draft has to be a choice, because you want to protect the land that that you was born or you choose to protect. It has to be your choice, and it's not because it has to be mandated. Let's be honest. We have been living in a constant amount of peace, I guess, for so many years and so many decades. This is not very talked very often. But the last US president that talked about peace was JFK. And we know what happened with him. Because he decided to talk about peace. So, those are the little things that, instead of being authoritarian, being more libertarian and showing that, hey, there is a choice. And if this is so good, you can open. There should be more discourse among families and among societies, especially in 2023, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially that we have the infrastructure to do so. We don't come from certain countries where, it's like war after war after war, and to a point when they manage to get back their country, it's such a chauvinistic kind of a political system, to the fact that they close the universities, only men could go to universities, only men could work. Like, okay, fine, so they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the right mindset, culture, and so on and so forth. So we don't agree with them, but we understand why they cannot have such conversation. But us, here in this part of the world where everything is flourishing, we can sit in a room where infrastructure is there, We are educated. Like education is also a choice here. Okay, so some bottom 40 society probably has some difficulty, but we have the basic infrastructure. This is the time. This is the place for us to have conversation. We not be so triggered with other people's opinion. It's time. It's time. If it's not now, when? Conversations about racial sentiments, conversation about religious rights, conversation about political rights. Have conversation, be diplomatic, be professional, but be truthful. I would be a proponent to these kind of things. Yeah.
You mentioned something that it was also remembered in our class of negotiation with Bruno Berdini, that in every negotiation, go with the truth, because honesty goes the distance.
That's not a very popular opinion. Actually, he's one of those rare people who actually mention these kind of things. I speak from experience, yeah. Sometimes people do say these kind of things, but in practice not so much, because people are so trapped playing the politics. When the leadership is dancing, the management is dancing, middle management dancing, everyone is dancing to the certain rhythm, because it's so difficult not to fit in. So difficult not to conform in the society, and people tend to conform. First, it's easier, less conflict, and of course you just want to be accepted. So in reality, very seldom to see that is being applied, and people justify. If you say to them you're not being truthful, they're going to, are you calling me a liar? How dare you? They're going to justify, like, we have to understand this and that, culture, society, politics, managing up, blah blah blah. So I have a lot of respect for him to tell that to MBA students, in which, like, we are being trained to, to be a little bit sneaky here and there, and he comes in your second year when you're about to finish your education and tell that to your face. I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, when he mentioned that, and also the quotes for, let's say, Nelson Mandela, that made your choices based on hope and not on fear, I cannot help but remember also the lyrics of River Phoenix, the late brother of Joaquin Phoenix, who wrote in the 90s a song. One of the lyrics was, go to the rescue with love and peace will follow. It's like, go to the rescue with the truth, peace and love will follow. And yeah, it goes the distance.
Yes.
And if somebody is offended, it's because they're not ready to handle the truth.
Yes, it goes the distance. You're right. This reminds me what my father keeps telling me. So I was in sticky situations like this all the time, and I am a lot of things. I can have a lot of weaknesses, but one thing that I know I can say about myself is that I'm truthful and I have my integrity intact. I know that time and time again, even when I do things which are all faulty and lots of mistakes, but I know one thing, I am like that. People often describe me, the Malay word is lurus bendul. Lurus means you're straight, bendul means you're dense. Like, you don't know how to do this. That is a description of me, but it's a choice. I wasn't born lurus bendul. It's a choice that I choose not to be this way and that way, because it's so easy to go this way and that way. It's very difficult to be straight. So my father always say, when I feel like, can I jump to that party, my life will be easier, because I feel like I'm smart enough to play the game. And then he would tell me, hujung tak bagus. Hujung means the end of the rope, tak bagus means not good. So integrity, truthful, goes the distance, because your ending will be good. The ending of people who just, dance to the whatever rhythm that is playing is not good. Yeah.
That's very insightful, to be honest. And in a certain way, I felt like right now I'm learning Bahasa, right? Now, we address these two windows, which is the heritage of the genetics based on the region that you are in, and also the religion, culture. I remember the former, that guy, he's still the CEO of the Washington Commanders, an NFL team, Dan Snyder, saying that, yeah, the culture is very good, but everybody knows that team is not working well. So culture is always important. What is the Malaysian culture, and how different it is from, let's say, the Indonesian culture, the Singaporean culture, or the Borneo or Thailand culture?
Okay. I think you will find similarities more than you can find differences.
Mm.
If you mingle long enough, then you will say, oh, okay, the Thais are slightly different than the Malays, slightly different than the Cambodians and the Brunei Malays. But in general, you will find that we exhibit similar nature, similar climate, similar temperament. Yeah, but you go deeper level, you stay in our homes, then you can say, okay, so she's from the south. Even when I stay in the northern girl, they're both Malay, in the northern girl's house, it's slightly different. Then you will see some of the nature would differ. But yeah, generally speaking, we have that temperament. I remember my professor, long time ago, probably more than 10 years ago, he told me he's Polish by origin, but then he was American. So he said, you people, he was joking, you people are so annoying. You're just like this all year round, just like your weather. You know why you're like that? Because your environment is so green. You drive from one end to the other end of Malaysia or one end to the other end of Southeast Asia, you see green, 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 you get water. From where I come from, the winter is harsh, the summer is harsh, the spring has so many pollens, every single season is different. That's why we have temperament, and you can see like different strikes of temperaments. But the Southeast Asians are just so mild in general. Yeah.
I have to say that that's quite accurate description. Why? Because I also have a past in Poland, and yeah, that thing happens. That even I have some Polish like Jakszymasz, Strolat, Gratulacje. Those are Polish words for saying congratulations, 100 years prosperity, or happy birthday, things like that. Yeah, those were during my time in Eastern Europe. But going to the point about the culture, yeah, it's true. One thing is Bangkok, another thing is Jakarta. Both have same problems with traffic, same problems with the rain. But when you see the people, they might look different just a little, and then after further review, the culture is very similar.
And also, if I were to comment something, remember my environment is very KL. Even though I come from Malacca, I grew up here, I studied here, I went to school here, I work here. And the international exposure that I got are also located in KL. So my Malaysian experience is different than a Kedah Malaysian experience. So I can say like, oh, we are all professional, we can be assertive, aggressive, but at the same time polite. But if we go to probably other states in Malaysia, they're more passive probably because they didn't receive the same kind of exposure that I received. And probably there's more at stake if they were to be too assertive. Like I probably don't have that same threat if I were to answer to my leader. Probably I could still keep my job, but the same situation replicated in other parts of Malaysia, slightly not as urban, probably they could lose their job. So again, all of these experiences are very much on the surface, but if we go deeper, we can see a lot of differences. Yeah, Malaysians and other Southeast Asians as well.
Given that we have culture, religion, and also genetics, there is always the critique that democracy is an experiment. And you mentioned about the advantage of being a Malay. So what happened with the chambers of representation here, especially if we took the perspective from the Indian Malays? I mean, Indian Malaysians, sorry. Why there are not so many Indian Malaysians or not Chinese Malaysians in the circles of representation?
So first and foremost, it's about volume, right? It's about the numbers. So by count, the Malays are the highest. So, and then we combine ourselves with the Bumiputra, we are almost 70% of the population.
Okay.
Yeah, so when you are high in number, you can dictate certain things and you can immediately create certain laws or legal connotation that you have certain rights, right?
Okay.
So that is an advantage. And then followed by the Chinese, probably less than 25%, followed by the Indian, less than 10 probably. Yeah.
And the others.
Yeah, so numbers matter in this sense. You represent your whatever, your inclination. So that is the first and foremost. And other areas would be, we have seen this being expressed in recent times. So in the past, from if we take 1957 up until the year 1998, it was static, very, very static. You have one group that was the government. We had opposition and they're strong, but they know their role was to oppose. They're not going to lead the country. Nobody believed that one day they would be prime minister or whatever. So this one was so stable, and then things happen because of this kind of thing. Like, it doesn't make sense. I only one group, blah blah blah. So people started to be more educated. People like me believe that we shouldn't proxy it, or the pillar shouldn't be religion. The pillar shouldn't be my race. The pillar should be, what's your mission? What's your vision for the country? What have you done? Your words and your actions, do they match? Things like that matter to me. Is my leader a good person indeed, or is he a pure politician, and things like that, right? So people started to think, and people started to act on those thought process. So from 1998 up until now, up until the last election, 2022, a lot of things happened. Things that before 1998 people couldn't believe this could happen. Yeah, so changes happen to accommodate newer trends, to accommodate people being properly educated. Yeah, new age voice. Yeah.
So from 1998 to 2022, it's like 24 years, almost like a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah, and that was how long the current Prime Minister struggled to get into this position, because he was in the former government, he became the leader of the opposition, he was long time in prison, and then he came out, he still was not Prime Minister, and then in the last election he got it. So whether you agreed or disagreed with him, people have opinions about him, but he was the leader of that changes. Among other leaders, of course, you cannot just attribute only to him, but yeah, that's what happened.
That's true. Even if you like or not a person, respect the journey.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful statement. Now, mentioning that there are things going on, what is going on with Hadija? What you're working on right now?
Right. So I teach master and PhD students, and I really do absolutely enjoy, especially on the research side. To teach research methods, to discuss research with them. I absolutely enjoy that. But actually, my real KPI being here is to have executive industry engagement. So actually 70% of the purpose that I'm here is supposed to be working with the industry. So we've been in touch with the corporate clients, SMEs, just doing pro bono training outside. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to train in celebration of the International Women's Month to train riders in the gig industry. So to give them more exposure that life is more than that. Like, you can stay there, but do other things that can help you in the future. You need something. It doesn't have only to be money. There's some skills you need to have under your sleeve, just in case if you no longer are relevant in this gig industry, you have something else for you to rely on. So these are the kind of things that keep me busy these days.
I'm glad to hear that, especially because not only where this comes from, but also who is the person. It's visible that you are a woman, a Malay, a Muslim in Southeast Asia. So how can you handle the work-life balance, given so much things that you're doing?
That's an excellent question, very relevant to my personal situation right now. So I am not married. I am not in a romantic relationship, but I have a huge responsibility at home in regards to my parents, and there are personal things happening at home where it does take time, it does take efforts, and that work-life balance suddenly is more true to me than ever, because always people say, that's why she can do it, she's not married, she doesn't have this and that, no children, blah blah blah. But then I do have aging parents, we have hospitals, medical appointments, and then I have a niece and nephew who come from unfortunately a broken house that I need to pay attention to, need to make sure that they are protected emotionally, physically, to show them that you have an aunt who's empowered, who makes her own decisions. So all of this suddenly make me reflect. I just recently, I sit down and I'm like, yeah, work-life balance is really important. Just because I don't have a husband or children to look after, I do have people who rely on me, who want to see me healthy, and who want to make sure that I'm happy. So yes, work-life balance really matters. Work is important. It's where you get your money, and your money should be clean. You are accountable for it. It should be clear. You don't get it out of not working. Yes, but then it's not everything. Family matters, personal life matters, relationship matters, friends matter. So take it from me.
That's true. Especially in this society that can be a little too lavish at times, and you can access this with a phone. It's like, yeah, why I'm not in Dubai driving a Lambo? It's like, not because you don't want to, but because, is that your end game? Sometimes I wish people can get what they wish for, so they realize it's more than that. And people can go through my Instagram. Yes, I had a very beautiful car, of course, the best one. I'm looking to be back to her, that because she has a she name. Yes, Andregan, that's her name. But once you get those things, you realize there is more than life. This reminds me of the song from Whitney Houston, "I Have Nothing Without You." Beautiful song from the movie The Bodyguard, and it's true. Job will pass, missions will pass, and then you will say, "Where is your woman? Or where is your man? Or where is your family? Where are your kids?" Because there is nothing more difficult to accumulate years down the road, 20, 30, 50 years down the road, and it's only you.
Yeah.
Where is your legacy?
Yeah. And even if you end up alone, your journey from now until that, hopefully nobody ends up alone, but even if you end up alone, throughout those years you touch people's lives. Just because you don't end up with anybody, just because you don't have a wife, husband, children, doesn't mean you have nothing to show for. Throughout the years you've touched so many lives, you have so many people, you have exposed things to people, so those matter too. Yeah, not just things that we can show, tangibly speaking. Yeah.
That's right. Because legacy is not supposed to be seen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when people say, okay, as life passed by, do you want to be remembered? And it's like, better not to be remembered, because why? The people who wants to be remembered, usually they did something so significant and so good. There are very few good things to do. You are likely to be remembered for something bad that happened, either if you want it or not.
Yes.
It's better just...
Likeliness, yes, you're right.
That's true. And given that right now you are building this and this new mission that arrived to you, what can be a recipe for life?
I think I also struggle because there are things like, for example, I'm assertive at work. I can look very, I can scold people, no issue, right? So because I believe in mission, but these kind of things also haunt me. If I don't do that, things are not gonna run, because look at my size, look at I don't carry that stance of somebody who looks powerful enough. So I have to leverage on my personality. But when I'm too rough with people, these kind of things also haunt me. But where's the balance? Where's the recipe? I feel like it's a struggle. But the problem about this notion is that we seek validation from other people too much. I think to do things which is true to you, true to your morality, to the ethical system where you are living in right now, that is more important than, I hurt their feelings, but why did you hurt their feelings to begin with? Is there a purpose? Is there a mission? So I think that would be a good compass, guiding point in your life, right? And also for me, my particular recipe would be every day there should be something that I achieve, no matter how small or how big. So that drives me, like waking up, it drives me that I need to achieve something. It doesn't have to be like something that is like, oh, it's a success. No, even outside there is that strip of road going to the train station, there are cats there. There are cats waiting for people like me feeding them every day. But sometimes I'm a little late. Like these other ladies beat me to it. So sometimes that's my mission for that particular day. I'm gonna be the person who feed the tummy of that cat. Because if I arrive late, yes, they're happy to see me, but their tummy is already full. Like I'm not the reason to fill up their tummy. So even something as silly as that, I have a daily mission to achieve. Yeah.
It's very important that you mentioned about daily missions. It's like improvement every day. Like 1 cent every day, all of a sudden you are changing a lot in 1 year. And that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, there was a time, I remember, that the environment was so good that it felt a little too difficult to improve every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we can discuss this.
Mm-hmm.
Batu Batu.
Uh-huh.
What memories brings you there?
Oh, okay. It's not the Batu Batu, yeah? So I was very happy there. Why? Because I just recovered from COVID. And I had the worst, it would be very, very awful of me to say the worst experience ever, but at least to me, I didn't have a very good COVID. And so two things were supposed to happen 1 week before Batu Batu.
Okay.
I was supposed to finally got my convocation for my PhD. I finished my PhD a long time ago, but then because of COVID, like years went by without my convocation. So if I could go back in time, when I got my master's degree, nobody was happy. I mean, everybody was happy, but my dad was the most proud person on this
so
planet
you only
Earth.
made one person happy and everybody was happy.
No, everybody
You sound
was
like a manager now.
So everybody was happy, but my dad, he was extremely, extremely proud of me. This is my master year. We go back in time now. So I remember him buying his shirts and trousers and shoes. Everyone was 2 pairs because he didn't know what to wear for my convocation for my master's degree. So he bought them like a couple of months before my real convocation day. So he was properly excited. Okay, so and then he was diagnosed with cancer within the month of my convocation. And because of biopsy, biopsy for some reason, like if you're okay and you did biopsy, you would just like have, like you would just go bad really quickly. So because, and it's prostate cancer and it is such a delicate area, and when they did the biopsy, he was just in a terrible, terrible state. And turned out that he was really, really ill on my convocation day, so he could not attend. So one of the reasons that I did my PhD and I had to finish was because I needed to give him that convocation day. It's just my personal reason. It sounds so weird, but that's one of the motivations. So and then I finished my PhD. And then there is no convocation because of COVID. I'm like, okay, be patient, Hadija, the convocation day will come. And then again, like I got everything, yeah. I took the robe, book my studio and everything. It has to be special because I'm the only person in the whole entire family of my mom and my dad's side with a PhD. Like everyone's educated, but I'm up until master's level. But of course, because I wanted to give my dad that special gift. But of course now he's much older, much older, and still with cancer. He doesn't go out, he doesn't leave the house at all except to go to the hospital. So one day, a few months before my convocation, he asked my sister secretly to bring him out because he wanted to buy shirt and trousers and shoes. So it was like, I said like, okay, nothing is going to spoil this. And then I got COVID. Did you know how broken my heart was? I was like, just God kill me now because I cannot endure this pain. I waited for this day for so long. So of course I could not attend my convocation. And then another thing, we were involved with the Sarawak state and they were supposed to have an event in ASB, and they did have the event. It was glorious. I was the second person. The main person was Saif. Saif was also in ASB. He was the number 1 person. I was the second person. We both got COVID. So there's like 2 reasons like really killed me that week, that I just had to stay home feeling awful going through COVID. And then at the end of COVID, Batu Batu happened. So I came to the island feeling like, you know what, everything could be inside of my head. If God says it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. You're just this big, right? You're here because of the mercy of God, the blessings of God. You can control everything. You can plan for years for that day to happen. If God wants to test you, He will test you. So I was just humbled back down to my knees. And when Batu Batu happened, I came in with like a fresh perspective in life. First, I was alive. Second, this is a beautiful island. And third, it's like, take life as it is. Don't plan and just be miserable when it is out of your hand. Yeah, sorry, this is such a long-winded story.
Actually, I welcome this. That's the purpose that we have this session. It's remarkable that you took this perspective of life, and instead of claiming yourself a victim, you became a survivor. That speaks volumes.
Thank you.
It's not a compliment, it's a fact. And that's really beautiful, to be honest, because some people may say, "Oh, that was not good luck," or maybe that the stars or the horoscope or the signs, maybe that person was not Capricorn or Sagittarius. Who cares? And then at the end of the day, it's like, are you alive to do it again? Are you alive to enjoy the little details? That's important, especially right now as we are watching in the rear mirror the post-pandemic behaviors of life. The fact that we are sitting here with no mask and a relative distance speaks a lot.
Yep,
Like,
absolutely.
all of a sudden we're gonna take a look years after this, and it's like, yeah, interesting days, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, as people are moving on with their lives and knowing that a lot of impact was created during your time at ASB, have you been in touch with some of the students that you happened to meet during that time? Do you know what happened with them?
Yes. Yeah. So I am lucky that that I met really good, caring people in ASB. So my nature is that I enjoy friendship, but I don't keep in touch. I have that problem. It's not like I hate the person. It's just that I don't keep in touch. That's one of the more problematic sides of me. So when you have people who are always, extroverted and assertive, when they say, I want to meet, I want to talk to you, let's text, reply my text, I appreciate that. That gives me some sort of accountability that, you know what, hey, she adds value to my life, she added value to my life, these people helped me a lot. For me to actually reciprocate that with my friendship. So yes, even from previous cohorts, even I came in when the cohort 2019, I missed the 2018. So from their cohort up until your cohort up until MBA 24, I still keep in touch with some people whose our wavelengths actually match. Yeah.
That's very valuable to know. Why I'm bringing this up, because early during the episode we discussed about the influence of a professor who actually happens to have a recollection of every time he does this test of the friend and foe, and you happen to have the record very, very long time until someone else broke the record.
Yeah.
Of course I did.
No.
Yes. I'm surprised that Bruno didn't mention that during the time the both of you got a dinner, because that was during the first week, but then he met most of you during the second week. So yeah, that happened. So how was your experience? How was your experience reading other people's on how to read the other people?
So, how to say this? Yeah, I've been accused so many times of having like self-fulfilling prophecy. So instead of recognizing that probably I have some skills of behavioral science or body language, people, especially, ex-boyfriends, especially in relationships that don't flag, because like I can sense things. My body language radar is quite good, in which I have tamed it in my adult life because it doesn't serve me well. I don't fit in the society if I were to rely on those. So they have become like mild and weaker each day. So that is actually one of the things that I have. People call it gut feeling. I really feel it in the gut. So I understand why such term comes into the picture, because I feel it and it's strong. And I wouldn't have evidence. I wouldn't have like, if you explain why do you think this person is like, I cannot say. I really cannot say, but I know. So I think this can be explained by the behavioral science, which is of course now thankfully it's a science, so that people like me are not going to be considered crazy. But yeah, Bruno is one of the people, even before I did that test, even before I got the same score as he did, he recognized that. And that's why I really appreciated that fact about it. Like, I didn't have anything to offer him. I'm nobody. I wasn't yet a professor at that point in time, but he respected that talent or skill of mine. Yeah.
It is a quite valuable skill.
And yours? What did you get? Don't tell me. You're gonna break my heart.
I better not tell it.
18, 19, or 20?
Well, it was not 20. It was not 19.
Okay.
But I'm gonna stop right there because it came not only from gut feeling or how to read, but also part of the training. People can see on my resume and also on part of LinkedIn that I have a past with the Department of State. So there is that. And for some reason, Professor Verdini began to joke, look at that, because we also have kind of a past. Hey, move on. If somebody wants to say, hey, why are you still doing that? It's like, hey, life in the big city. Kuala Lumpur is a big city, right? So, pretty much it.
Mm.
But that also tells when you are in a position of leadership, because you can send those little tricks and start reading people if they really want to help you because they feel like, or because they just want to get some profit from it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we see that in, let's say, when you're doing venture capital and you want to read not only the founder but also the team. It's like, do they actually believe in this, or they just want to cash as soon as possible?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with what happened with SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank, and a lot of money has been involved. A lot of lives can be influenced just for one single decision.
Mm-hmm.
And also how important it is to clarify between charisma and competence. Sometimes they are not very good correlated. But if I want to go Chinese with a quote by one of the prime ministers, it's like, don't believe, it doesn't matter about the color of the cat as long as the cat gets the mouse.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what it matters in the end. And
but unfortunately, charisma works. That's why people study it. That's why it's important to have the executive presence, because it works. It still does work. If you were to compare between charisma and competence, people will still say that to that competent person, at least have some personality, show that you're there, you're interesting, or at least even if you're not interesting, you are eccentric in certain way, like Jack Ma, for example. I mean, he's not the most good-looking person on the planet Earth. I mean, you can be smart, but if you don't have that X factor, and he did have the way he spoke, even though, it looks a little bit eccentric, right? So, but then people wouldn't be telling the charismatic people to, have developed some competencies and things like that, at least not in the beginning until they are found out. So it does work, unfortunately. It is a superficial world. People want to see those, the things on the outside. So that's why in business school, we teach you, the charismatic leadership, executive presence, because they do fly at least to a certain extent.
yeah, it can only go to a short extent, because then they will say, we just a record.
You will be found out, yeah.
And that's why when that result came out, this is what happens during the class. They began to say some other things, and then we did the same exercise, like in front of everybody. They brought Lorenk and they brought me to do that. And then DW was there saying that there's going to be a financial reward, and I had to play the fool to get the money. Yeah, that happened.
Whoa.
Well, it was I would say, it was a fun moment. And in the end, it's about the purpose of your skills, what mission they serve. That it goes to the ultimate goal. It's like, imagine in the future I open a halal farm outside Austin, Texas, and you will say, you're killing so many cows, and it's like, hey, but a lot of communities will receive this that they don't have right now the purpose. And it's like, but you're gonna make so much money. To make an Islamic loan of zero interest, because that's what the proceedings goes for. Because I was beneficiary from those in the past, and it's like, you will always have contrarians. But as long as your skills,
you will always have,
as long as your skill serves a purpose and a mission that benefits, compromises can be done.
Yeah.
Which leads me to something that I need to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So, given your career, which was the most difficult compromise you made?
Boston, because
Mm-hmm.
please don't laugh.
Do I look like I'm laughing?
Okay. So, 4 months before Boston, so I have a cat. His name is Luli. So he is 4 years old. So at that time he was 3 years old. He lives in my apartment where he sees only me and my sister. He never grew up with any other cat. And it's always working. Even when I do outstation, it's only for a few days. Practicum is always like the longest time, but even that, my sister can take care of him. He's so attached to me. 4 months before that, I got another cat, Professor Ambra's cat, because she was leaving. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have Jade, and Jade was wonderful, great addition to my household. And of course, my Luli is like, oh, I'm not comfortable, and Luli got aggressive. So it's like, and I was like, oh my god, I need to go to Boston, and I cannot lose this opportunity. So, and then within that 3 to 4 months, they managed to tolerate each other. They were not the best of friends. Sometimes they hurt each other, but they were okay. And the reason why I needed them to be okay with each other is because I was going to Boston, and I cannot have my sister take care of them both. Like, they're my choice. I shouldn't just impose that to my sister. So I wanted to send them to a cattery, Catzonia. And it's wonderful. I would really recommend that to anyone. So Catzonia Damansara. So I booked one of the bigger rooms, but still they would be in the same limited compound instead of the whole entire apartment, right? So that was very difficult for me, because like 1 month and a half I arrived quite early because I wanted to finish some work and adjust, acclimatize, and so on and so forth. So that was actually up until now I feel like. And then Jade, she passed away 1 month after I came back. So she actually got like a chronic disease that I didn't notice before. Ambra didn't notice before. So when I came back, I was so happy. Okay, we're gonna live one happy family. And then she started to deteriorate, and then she died almost immediately. So like at that point in time, I was like, why did I go to MIT? I could have, spent more time with her. So if you ask me a compromise that I had to make, or a regret that could happen, it's like, even though MIT, Cambridge, Boston was wonderful, I wouldn't trade this for anything else, but still, that happened.
Isn't this an example that life happens?
Yeah.
Because why you will be regretting for something that it was really...
It was amazing, exactly, yeah.
And you didn't have control of what happened with the cat, right? I mean, the contrarians will say, and they will signal you, like, why you didn't care, and it's like, hey.
Yeah. So I accepted it as such, but because it's so difficult for me to find a compromise, I never want to live my life with regret. Even when I did anything wrong, you will find me say I'm accountable for those things, and there are reasons why I did that, but I wouldn't be saying like it was a compromise, it was a regret. So it took me a while to find something, but yeah, actually that probably where I compromised. I was chasing after Boston. I waited for Boston long time. I was supposed to go in 2019. My visa never did arrive. City had to replace me last minute, 2 to 3 days before MIT started. So, and then I was like, promised, next year you're going to go. Next year was the lockdown, and then lockdown again. And then when I got to go, I was like, I'm not going to miss this chance, because I probably will leave ASB. So I went, and it was one of the best professional experience I ever had. But then in my personal life, because they are my heart, so things like that happened too. I had to sacrifice some things.
Now, I hope you don't mind if I go a little direct with the following question. You mentioned seconds ago that you were thinking about doing your move.
Yeah.
What was that call on your heart that said, now is the time?
2 things. Okay, one is the more selfish and direct reason is I have to be a professor, and a real one. So I know in ASB, everyone's so generous in calling me professor. One, because you're just really wonderful people, and second, because it's the American culture. Regardless if your real title is professor or not, you're going to call your teacher professor. That's wonderful. But I wasn't one. And my ambition is to be one. So I was a senior lecturer, and I was the only senior lecturer. I wasn't even an assistant professor. So there is a certain skill that I was not informed that I should fulfill in ASB. So one of them is to have international education. So I did have international education. My university is international, but it is located in Malaysia. So from foundation, degree, master, PhD, same university. So I've always been very, very proud of my alma mater, but then I didn't know that was a hurdle. So I knew that I needed to leave to get some experience outside and then to showcase myself that, you know, I am capable and I am of a certain skill. And so this place, they took into consideration of all of my background. They went to Senate meeting and they even bypassed giving me assistant professor. I am immediately associate professor given all of this experience. So that recognition was important at that point in time. So if I could be frank, I am 39. So when I made that decision, I was 38. And if I waited and waited, there is a certain ruler that I needed to achieve. So I cannot be 60 and not even assistant professor if I'm speaking in terms of ambition. So that's one reason. And second, I feel like ASB students don't need me. Do you know what I mean? Like, of course you need Professor Verdini, you need this and that. These are people who actually add values to your understanding of knowledge and things like that. Like anyone could do my job. I don't think I added that much value. I know I added value, but not that much value. I feel like there are other places that needed me, and I served a long time in ASB, and I feel like I'm ready. And when I come here, I'm not saying that they are of any lower prestige or anything, but this is where I could make a real difference. Like there is a delta that I could achieve from this standard to this standard. So it didn't have to be this university. I just wanted to be somewhere where I could make that difference in my country. Yeah.
I'm happy to hear this. Actually, I feel honored to hear this because the same argument that you said is totally valid to every single professional outside in the world. Let's take for a moment I would say people that are in the sports business and they are not starters, they are still in the bench. They want to be in a team that they can be starting every single week because they feel that position reflects the best of their abilities.
Yes.
And some people ask me why you asking that harsh question, but you need to ask that was that the right call on your heart to do that move? And I was happy to hear right now the full extent of your answer, because time is like water. You know, you cannot hold it on your hand; it passes by very quick.
Yeah. Yes.
And we are always happy to hear what is gonna be up to you in years to come, and everything that happens. We only wish that you can flourish, not only what they expect, but beyond.
Thank you.
Because it's not about making people pay their mistakes, or it's not about having a chip on their shoulder, or it's not about that you want to prove them wrong. It's about proving yourself right.
Thank you.
Again, it's not a compliment, it's a fact. It's a fact. Yeah, talking about compromises and talking about decisions, one of my compromises that was a little difficult was not to act quick. And we can go back to episode 2 when I discussed this. It was the crisis of 2015 in the oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of friends were either having the opportunity to interview with Mackenzie or to take jobs in consulting firms. And I decided not to jump ship. I wanted to still be in the ship of oil and gas to see where my career will take me. And there were years of struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It was during the time that I happened to win a hackathon using blockchain technology that some of the clients were going to ask me how they can use that technology for their own profit. And I realized that it's time to start getting skills in businesses. So that from that time in 2018, it was a journey to see where can I get the MBA education. And a friend gave me a ticket to apply to MIT for free. During the interview, they told me the program in Kuala Lumpur can serve with the actual learning going on.
Yeah.
So that's how one thing led to another. If I say that there was a compromise, it was to not act as quick, because I should have been acting quicker. I should have been more resolute and take the the consequence of that decision. But at least something is building upon right now, which is good.
Yeah.
And then we can also add up about why the podcast, why this. I wanted to do this long time ago, but I didn't have either the stability or the equipment. Because right now we're having equipment that was being provided by DigiPower that I have to pay for. It's not a sponsorship. and a capable phone that actually has a capable camera. But before that, I didn't have like either a good location, good sounds, or people willing to do this. There are some episodes that has been recorded before traveling here that by the request of their persons, they told me not to publish them. So I keep them silent. I keep them only in the drive that they can access only. But that will be something that say to act quick or to act as a resolute. Also to, in a certain way, say, if you want to do something right. And don't prove them wrong, just prove yourself right. Which will be something to smile about in time to come. Now, given that this is the floor number 5, I wanted to be self-aware of the environment itself. So, who is the people who usually come here and sit?
Okay, good question. So, this is called the Postgraduate Lounge.
Oh.
Yeah. So the owner of the university is she's Datin Rohaida. So she's been with the university since its inception. So since she was very young. So she always had this vision of having a well-designed area. But of course, a private university, your bottom line is sales, right? Numbers. So across the decades, they have been very focusing on that to make sure, okay, so fine quality, you need to have good professors, you need to have good infrastructures, but you need to have numbers. So in terms of numbers, we are doing well. There is a competitive advantage, especially the leadership of the company managed to get to, how to say, to be optimistic about the lockdown. So they managed to get so many international students during the lockdowns because, we could deliver all education online, right? Otherwise, the government of Malaysia, Ministry of Higher Education, wouldn't allow so much of online delivery. You have to give smaller portion to online delivery and majority will be physical. So, and then she was like, okay, we actually reached a place where we are comfortable with the numbers. We need to now position ourselves in terms of branding. So that's why the Cyberjaya institution came into place. She bought like a bigger campus. This is no longer enough. But she said, while we're still here, we're getting all the licenses there. Let's create a lounge where we can do executive, corporate, and postgraduate activities in a way that is like more posh, more more credible rather than looking like a smaller version of a university. So yes, so this is for the VIPs such as the masters and PhD students, as well as for corporate clients and guests like you. Special guests like you.
I need to share this with you because last episode I was catching up with Persis. We got invited to the Singaporean Management University Sustainable Investment Symposium. They got a very nice agenda for one day, and then on the 6th floor of the business department, we went to the 6th floor for the networking session. It looks like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be a little bigger, but it has also the same bar. We networked with each of the panelists. There was like 5 sections for each of the panelists, but everybody was there. There was a raffle. Persis got some gift, and I really feel that idea that on the top floor, because you're also in the business of making deals.
Mm-hmm.
This helps. And if have a little of experience about what Southeast Asia or Malay culture, not Malaysian, Malay, which is Malaysian plus Islam, it's fine.
It kind of is reflected, yeah?
Yeah,
By the
pretty much.
ambience, yeah.
So kudos for that, and thank you for the opportunity to be recording an episode in a sterling place. Now, as I'm watching you,
Mm-hmm.
some other people will be watching you as well,
Mm-hmm.
especially young Hadijas.
Okay.
So, what piece of advice will you give to your younger self?
Right. I always get reminded about my younger self because I work with young ladies as well in my current workplace and even in Asia School of Business. So I always appreciate their enthusiasm, their confidence, their work ethics. But what I wish to tell them and to tell my younger self is to not seek approval from other people. I mean, if they approve of you, it's a bonus. It shouldn't be the end game. Not to extremely seek validation from people. Be true to yourself. Have the discipline. Produce good quality work. Be loving. Be caring. Be approachable. Protect yourself after you're doing all of these things. But just be true to yourself. You'll be proud of yourself regardless, because people's approval, it lingers for one moment. It cannot feed you. And even if it does feed your ego, at that point in time, you will need more tomorrow and the next day. So we need to start training ourselves that we are here to do the right thing, to be proud of ourselves. If we get validation and approval, it's a bonus, but it shouldn't be your end game. Okay?
I cannot find a better way to end this episode. How can people find you?
Alright. So I'm a dinosaur. I did not exist in the internet before, but due to professional pressure, I had to. So now I'm on LinkedIn. You can just type my name and you will find me. There is a picture of me there. Please, let's follow each other and let's connect and teach me a thing or two about this world of internet. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm sorry I don't have Instagram yet or TikTok yet. Okay, so let's see what the future holds. Probably I'm going to be there soon.
Hadija, I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. You're a good interviewer. Excellent one.
So I really want to appreciate all of this. And for people out there, please stay safe and see you when I see you. Bye.
Bye.